Welcome to Moonshine Lore and Legends, a Still in the Clear production to bring you stories of backwoods whiskey, outlaw ingenuity, and the dusty crossroads where survival met the law. Here we dig up true tales from America's shadowed past, or at least they're mostly true. The kind of stories that get better every time they're told. We'll talk moonshiners who defied the revenuers, lawmen who rode the ridgelines, and communities shaped by the still. Some stories are wild, some are tragic, and some are still whispered in hollers and hillsides today. Now pour a sip of that good stuff and settle in. The fire's going strong, the crickets are singing, so have a seat by the flames and let me tell you a story. Today, we're heading deep into the Tennessee Appalachians, into the foggy hollers and shadowy coves of Polk County, where a name once echoed with both fear and admiration: James Dad Garrett. He wasn't a myth, he wasn't a rumor. He was a flesh and blood moonshiner, a dead shot with a Winchester, and a man so fierce that local revenuers nearly gave up chasing him altogether. This is the true story of an ambush, a mountain soaked in tension, and the final showdown that silenced one of Tennessee's most dangerous outlaw distillers. To understand James Dad Garrett, you have to understand Frog Mountain. It wasn't just a place, it was a fortress. Rugged, wooded, and high enough to see trouble coming from a mile away. Frog Mountain was the perfect hiding spot for a man who wanted to disappear into the trees. He'd already killed his brother in a land dispute back in 1898. Locals whispered about his temper, his eerie calm before violence, and the way he could vanish between the ridgelines when trouble came a-looking. He was known to pack a Winchester lever-action rifle and carried himself with the conviction of someone who knew every lawman in 3 counties feared him. And they had reason to. By 1900, Garrett's still on Frog Mountain was producing enough white lightning to supply taverns as far south as Georgia. His network was tight, his routes were guarded, and if you crossed him, well, there were stories about that too. In the summer of 1900, the federal government decided it had had enough of Garrett. Revenue agents, backed by Polk County lawmen and armed with arrest warrants, formed a 7-man posse. Among them was a man named Pierce, a seasoned deputy with a sharp jaw and a soft spot for frontier justice. They knew they'd have to move fast and they'd need someone who knew the terrain. So they found a guide, a local man, someone who swore he could lead them to Garrett's still without raising suspicion. But that tip was the first mistake. As the sun crept over the ridge, the posse reached a narrow slope on Fog Mountain. The air was damp, quiet. Too quiet. Then, from atop a downed log near the still site, a figure rose. It was Garrett, Winchester in hand, calm, watching. The revenuers barely had time to raise their weapons before Garrett opened fire. Deputy Pierce went down, hit just above the hip. The posse scrambled for cover behind trees and rocks, but Garrett had the high ground. One agent fired a shotgun blast into the log where Garrett had been standing. When the smoke cleared, he was gone, vanished into the trees like a ghost. While I clear my chamber, swing by stillintheclear.com. We've got free distilling guide sheets, a premium gear, grains to get you going, and a newsletter that can't be beat. Now back to the hunt. Garrett didn't just vanish. He became a specter. No one saw him for months. Rumors swirled that he was dead, wounded, or had slipped into Georgia under a false name. But whispers from the hills said otherwise. He was still there, watching, moving between caves and cabins, aided by those who feared him or owed him. And the revenuers, they stopped going up Frog Mountain altogether. One local paper wrote, "He is so well known to the officers that they know better than to go alone." There was one story that said Garrett once handed his 10-year-old son a revolver and made him swear vengeance against the uncle who betrayed him. True or not, it stuck. The tale became legend. Garrett wasn't just dangerous, he was a myth that breathed. By 1908, there was a new sheriff, and he'd had enough. John Biggs took office. He was younger, angrier, and determined to break the Garrett curse. Biggs led a larger posse into the mountains. This time, no guides, no warnings, just force. Sheriff Biggs' instructions to the posse were clear. They were going up that mountain to bring Garrett to justice. But one way or another, it was going to end today. They'd bring him down to face his charges, or they'd leave his corpse up on Frog Mountain. They approached Garrett's known camp at dawn. When they called for surrender, Garrett answered with lead. A firefight broke out. Garrett hit 2 deputies before a shotgun blast caught him in the leg, then the back. He went down hard, rifle clutched and eyes wild. As he lay bleeding on the mountain, he cursed, muttered oaths, and then silence. The law had finally caught up to James Dad Garrett, but the hills kept his story. They say the trees remember, and up on Frog Mountain the name Garrett still carries weight. His legend was born from real blood, real bullets, and real moonshine. He wasn't a Robin Hood. He was a man shaped by isolation, rebellion, and the old code of the hills. And he wasn't alone. Across Appalachia, men like Garrett stood as symbols of resistance, not just to taxes, but to intrusion, to control, to the slow sprawl of a world that didn't understand life in the hills. Today we look back and call it folklore, but in 1900 it was survival. So next time you sip on something homemade, think about Frog Mountain. Think about a man with a Winchester and a still. And remember, moonshine stories aren't just about liquor. They're about life and death and everything in between. If this story fired you up a bit, share it with a friend, leave us a review, or check out our past episodes for more tales from the backwoods. Next week, we head to the Ozarks and learn about one of the most infamous speakeasies in the South. Well, that's it for this episode of Moonshine Lore and Legend. If you enjoyed the story, go ahead and follow the show, or leave a review, or tell a friend who appreciates a little backwoods history with their bourbon. We've got plenty more tales simmering on the fire, from outlaw runs and revenue raids, to the kind of back porch whispers you won't find in the history books. So until next time, keep your mash warm and your barrels hidden, and keep that shine flowing. I'm Cyrus. Thanks for sitting by the fire with me.